Hello and welcome to WMT Reviews. I am Wiseman Tanofsky. The Generations Combaticons, fully assembled and ready for warfare. And you'd like to think that what their robot modes may lack, the finished product will more than make up for. And I certainly hoped that was true when I first purchased them. One could say I'm somewhat wiser now, and realised that maybe I set my my hopes a little too high with this guy. I came straight from the Fall of Cybertron game and went, I want a Bruticus! And immediately went out to Toys R Us and picked up all 5 at once, spending just shy of £100 really, for all 5 of them. So let's see what all the fuss was about, shall we? Now we'll come in first with Brawl, because he's the most likely to fall over, dispose of his little pea shooter, and what we're going to do is get him more or less back into tank mode. So here you have Combaticon Brawl more or less back into his tank mode, and all you're really going to want to do here is come behind, relocate these to the back like this, rotate his cannon upwards, and rotate his wrists down like this to create sort of stability. And there you have one leg of Bruticus. Put you off to the side over here. Next we're going to come into Swindle, remove his gun, chuck that over there somewhere. More or less convert him back into his scout mode. Now you're not going to want to fully convert him back to truck mode, because you want to get his legs out like this, or his feet. And there's another joint in the middle here that you're going to peg the front part of his chassis into. And there you have a very simplistic second leg. Put these guys off to the side. Next with Blast Off, remove his 2 cannons, like so. And again, more or less return him to vehicle mode. Are you seeing a pattern emerging here? I certainly am. Here you have Blast Off returned to shuttle mode. Now what you're going to want to do here is crank out the connector joint. And I knew I shouldn't have reattached these pegs. Detach these pegs like so. And then each of these joints in his legs actually contains a hidden joint that will allow you to unfold one half of the mighty Bruticus's arm. That's right, I said his arm, because I'm doing this right. And unfold his fists. And clip the 2 parts of his fist, of his arm and his forearm together. Peg his fist together like so. And then position the forearm around it like so. And there you have Bruticus's arm. Lovely. Let's just pop you there. You're not going to stand up as well as the legs, are you? Returning now to Vortex. We're going to remove his sword. More or less return him to vehicle mode. And we're not going to bother reattaching all that. You've got more or less vehicle mode reassembled. You're going to fold out the connector joint, pull apart this section and put this section up to create the shoulder, fold this section down, open it up to reveal the fist, fold this up once again, pig together the forearm, and there you have limb number 2. Onslaught, we're going to remove his rubbish cannon, rotate his legs around to return them to where they were in vehicle mode. We're going to flip up the Bruticus head and rotate, once we've pegged this down, rotate the entire chest around and reconnect the Bruticus pelvis and peg it in down like this. And then the arms, it's a simple matter of manoeuvring them out of the way, and there's a peg round here that you can peg them into to give them something to hang on to try and convince them even more to just stay out of the way, because no one wants to be reminded about Onslaught's rubbish arms. Fold up the victory flaps. He's starting to look a lot like Bruticus. What we're going to do next is force this connector joint in like so, and manoeuvre it until it's in a preferable position. Do the same with Brawl, more or less. Force the connector joint in this limb too, because they're rather tight and on rather unhelpful ratchet joints. And now you've got one leg longer than the other. Why is one leg longer than the other? And once you've reconfigured Brawl's combining mode so that it's actually right, you don't have one leg longer than the other. Crank him up like this because he's beginning to get a bit tall. Take blast off and force him in like so. And finally you're going to take Vortex and force him into this connector slot like so. And there you have it. And here we have Bruticus Maximus in all his combined glory, I think. The fact of the matter is, something got lost in translation, because if you look at the Bruticus Maximus that we saw in Fall of Cybertron, this is not him. This is some sort of skinny, gorilla-armed thing. Don't really know what to make of it. We'll move on to the gun. Take Swindle's pea shooter, combine it with Brawl's Gatling gun, one of Vortex's guns here, and insert it like so, with the fin pointing down, and again on this side, fin pointing down, and finally take the two swords from Vortex, insert like that, and you have a sonic cannon. At least that's what I'm calling it. And it can hold into Bruticus's hand, he says, praying. Yeah, there we go. You can position Bruticus to have it, preparing to be fired down on many an Autobot. And this, of course, frees up Onslaught's god-awful twin cannon to become Bruticus's iconic shoulder-mounted cannons. Now, in terms of posability, how can you pose this figure? Very, very bloody carefully is the answer to the question. Now, the shoulders are afforded somewhat, limited forward and backward posability. The elbows are afforded the posability of the legs of the combined figure, be it Vortex or Blastoff. Blastoff's side is a little more posable than Vortex's, being that it's right on the waist joint and hasn't got all this clutter in the way. The legs go out and twist round, more of a hindrance really than help, and that's it. That's all you get. That's really all you get. Not a tremendous amount of posability in there at all. And worse than that is the fact that every decision you make in terms of posability is judged by the legs. And at any instant they can just decide, nope, and fall down. Now, talking more aesthetically about the figure, the colour scheme works. The whole Smarties colours, I rather like them. My problem with this figure is not with the colour scheme at all. My problem with this figure is in the engineering of it. The right arm is longer than the left arm. What the hell? the chest is so skinny, and yet the whole thing is so heavy it overpowers the joints in the legs. It won't even stand up to be turned round. You come behind it here, there's not a lot going on, really, at all. It's such a meh figure, and I'm so disappointed. And as such, I am so disappointed by this figure. It's just... I felled the mighty Titan with but a single finger. I don't know what went wrong. I don't know if they were a bit too cheap in the designing, if they got a Nimrod to design it. I think it was rushed, really. It's rushed, and they brought it out at a time when they really couldn't afford to, because it feels cheap. I mean, you can have me shake it around. I know it doesn't fall apart, but it's so light, and the plastic feels so cheap, and it just won't stand up. If you're not going to play with it, if you're just going to have it standing on the shelf, then I suppose it's fine. You can find a pose that works. You can use a bit of blue tack maybe to stabilise it a bit. But if you want to actually play with this thing, and if, you know, maybe you're doing stop motion or something, it's not good at all. You can't really do anything with it. And because it's such a 50-50 split between whether it's going to be good or whether it's going to be awful, depending on what you're going to do with it, it's slap bang in the middle. It's a 5 on the Orsometer. It's a very disappointing 5. I'm sorry to report. I like the Sonic Cannon. The Sonic Cannon's kind of cool. And visually there's nothing wrong with it, but for playability it's dreadful. Because there's no playability in it at all, really. I mean, you've got this option here, where if you open up... I give up. You open up his arm, you can fold out the gun from Vortex's vehicular mode, and then the thing won't clip back together. There we go. And now he's got a gun for a hand, which looks only slightly less ridiculous than the moonwalker pose that he's pulling right now. So yeah, it's a 5 on the Orsometer. Pick it up if you must. Individually the figures are okay. All of their vehicle modes are fantastic except for Onslaught's. Onslaught's is rubbish. But the rest of them are great. But Bruticus himself is just a great big flop. Literally. And how dare you hit Triptychon on the way down? You don't deserve to be on the same shelf as Triptychon. Just go away. Go away. So yeah, that was the Transformers Generations Bruticus. And that was a 5 on the Orsometer for it. Now, one thing I will say is that there are a number of third-party companies who are creating upgrade kits for this monstrosity. And I've seen a couple of them. The Echo Transformers one looks okay. And the other one is being made by Microblaze Creations, which features an entirely new mould for Onslaught. And that's the one that I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for that one. I'm not going to get the Echo Transformer one, because it seems sort of... it does seem good, but it's not as good as what Microblaze are cooking up. So I'm going to wait for that. I'm going to end here. Yeah, that was Bruticus, apparently. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Wiseman Tanofsky, and this has been WMT Reviews. Thank you very much. Goodbye.